Everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Double D. I have been trying to figure out how I want to go about this video. Everybody's talking about the Riff, of course, the monster Riff from Nuno. A lot of people are playing it, a lot of tabs out there and stuff like that as to how to play it. I want to kind of go through how to practice it because it's intimidating. It's very intimidating and it's a little confusing because of the phrasing of the actual lick. So it's confusing to most players, I think, because we're seeing three notes being hammered on. So let's take the first bar, 0, 7, 12, right? Okay, so that's, we think of it as a triplet. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you know, that whole 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But we have to break our mind from thinking that just because we're playing three notes with our left hand, that we're going to be playing triplets. So they're actually 1 E and 1 E and we could talk about the techniques, all the different things that this lick, these 16 bars have done to all of us guitar players over the past couple of weeks. It starts with hammer-ons from nowhere, open string picking in conjunction with those hammer-ons from nowhere. We're talking about 3-note phrases over 4-note feels, shred worthy, right? It's just got, it's an abundance of technique all within these few bars, and we're all talking about it. But how do we break it down? So in order to hear it kind of the most efficiently and effectively, I think you should start to hear it against a click track real slow. I'm going to start at 60 beats per minute. Instead of doing 16th notes, we'll start off with 8th notes. So it'll be 1 and 2 and we're going to start off right now. I'm just going to do some alternate picking to kind of make it clear how the example is and go over the phrasing. It's a repetitive picking pattern and a repetitive finger motion. The spacing changes every 2 bars with the chords. So there's 2 bars of each chord and each riff fills up those 2 bars, then new pattern. Keep this in mind, it's in standard drop D tuning, so D, not down a half step or anything like that. D, A, D, and then G, E, E. So just take the low string, move it down a whole step. What helped me think about it was how many times I hit the open strings in the riff. And you can see from this tab here, 1 low E string, followed up by 1, 2, 3 A strings, and then it gets a little funky right here. We got a D string, and then you see our phrase, our first bar ends with an open D string. So that lets you know right off the bat that this isn't 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, and I can use my mouse to kind of guide you through this, but right here would be where the second click starts. So we're going to do this and break it down and make it real slow just to start to get this phrasing under our fingers. We've got open strings, and then we've got 3 more. So 1 E and 3 A's, and then 5 on the D. So break it down like 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. All the way at the end of the phrase here, you see, it's not a 3-note pattern anymore, and we've just kind of created this stumbling effect. We're going to break these groupings up into even smaller chunks. So we'll start off with the first open E and the first open A that we run to, and you see that's 0, 7, 12 on the E, and then 0, 7, 12 between the A. So how does that sound as 8th notes? 2 and so just break breaking this monster riff up into little itty bits and pieces, dissecting it into a couple of patterns, a couple of these repetitive patterns really helped me learn it. So you see how I have O 7 12 and then O on the A, 7 on the A, and then 12 on the E. So that's your first group of 3. So then let's go to the next group of 3, which is easy peasy, right? O 7 12 twice on the A. So far we have, and now it gets a little tricky because we go open on the D and then 7 on the A, 12 on the A. And then we end the bar with an open string there. And then we come back in this 3-note pattern by doing our next hammer-on the 7, and then, which is on the D string, and then 12 on the A string. So group 1 of these 3 notes, and then group 2 of the 3-note patterns, and then group 3, which goes over the bar. Right? So then we get into our next group, which is going to be O 7 12 on the D entirely, and then O 7 on the D, 12 on the A. So you can alternate pick this. You can pick really kind of however you want it while you're first learning this, if you really want to get the clarity going, and then start to work up to these hammer-ons. So let's see where we are so far. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. So this, you can see we now have our 6 notes with a 2-note tag. We have open on the D, and then 7 and 12 on the A, which is probably one of the trickiest moves. You got to do it going up and down, and then A, 0 and 7, and then E string, and then 0 7. Getting this down is definitely tough. This is the hardest section. This is the hardest stretch. If you feel pain, like I said, just stop, give a break, stretch your hands out, you know, put some balm, some salve, whatever you got, something to calm it down. Take a break for a couple minutes and then come back to it. And let's use the metronome to kind of break this down in 8th notes for right now. So 60 beats per minute, 1 and 2, and it's going to just feel real slow, but it's a great way to practice this riff. 2, 1 and 2 and. So you feel it there at the end, this little like trampoline bounce, this little shift on these last 8 notes from the open D that hammers on from nowhere to the 7, and then open A to 7, down to that low, I'll end up calling that the E string all the time, the low D. So it's, you just end up skipping a note. It's a little bit of a hiccup. And just practice that last section. And it's great to practice all the groups, you know, of 2. That's how I really started getting it down. The first set. And then the second set. The third set. And then the 4th set. And then this final final set, the fifth set with the 8 notes. So you've heard it in 8 notes. Now let's pick it up a little bit. Let's go, instead of 1 and 2 and, what happens when we start to break this down? It's not triplets, remember. We're not going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. See, it just doesn't phrase out right, because then we're not getting the hiccups. It just feels too stiff that way. What it really is 1 and a 2 and a. And you can feel the open string, that low D, the low note should be your 1 again after 2 bars. So practice the last set of 8 going into those 3 notes, you know. 1 and a 2 and a. The picking pattern and the fingering pattern, okay? It's always going to fall that way. The next pattern, as far as what the shape is going to be, the next 2 bars is a little easier. Yay! Okay, so instead of the 7 to 12 stretch, we're going to be doing a 7 to 10 stretch. So it's the same picking pattern, and it's the same hammering as far as the open string to your fretted notes, your index finger and your pinky, okay? So instead of going 0, 7, 12, we're going 0, 7, 10. So how are we going to practice that? 1, 2, 1 and a 2 and So you see that my downstroke is the accent of the click, okay? And for bar 1, and when we get over here to bar 2, you're actually, the 1 is this 7 again. But we want to just not think of it that way. We want to just kind of feel it, you know what I mean? Even though I'm saying not to think of these as triplet patterns, if you think of these as just a bunch of series of 6 notes together, or a whole string of notes, it just becomes overwhelming. So trying to break it down into that hammering pattern, and breaking it down into even smaller groups, the groups of 6 notes at a time, and how it phrases, how it falls on the 1 and the downbeats and all of that. That's the essential part to really getting this down fluidly, you know. So we don't want to practice at a speedy rate. Practicing efficiently will give us good results. It'll give us technique, it'll give us fluidity, and one of the byproducts of good practice is you can get faster at things. You can get more efficient if you do things properly, you know, and the phrasing, how everything kind of lands on the one, how everything goes in the notes, against the chords, against the click, all that stuff. That's all. He's not thinking about it. He's just playing these phrases and he's nodding his head and rocking out, right? And so you don't want to get caught up in, while you're learning this, too much thinking about the picking or any of that stuff. That's going to eventually come to just a series of hammer-ons, and you're just going to be picking a few of the notes. I tend to, when I get to that tricky part I was talking about, the D open to the A, 7 and 12, I tend to give a double. I tend to pick an upstroke on the D and then follow it up with an upstroke on the A, and then a hammer. So even though a lot of it is hammer, you know, a little bit of a cheat there, and I find myself doing that as I get it up to speed. So anyway, let's look at riff number 3 of the monster riff. Okay, so we're back to a bigger stretch here. We're looking at 0-5-9 now. So E string 0-5-9, and then A string 0-5 with a 9 on the E. Of course, D string, drop D. And then you're going to repeat the pattern twice on the A string again. And then let's do that with the click. 1 E and a 2 E and a. I'm really trying to pick out the those open strings and but also accent the 1, so you can hear where it's kind of happening, how that 1 is still moving around. And it's a good thing to kind of get that feel under your hand at this tempo, even though it feels real straight and doesn't really even sound like the lick yet. So what's the next phrase? The next one is that same pattern, but moved up to the 8th and 12th fret. Let's look at this whole lick again and break it down. First 6, next 6, then the tricky 6, right? 0 on the D, and then hammer from nowhere, 8-12 on the A, and then D, hammer to 8, and then hammer your D down to the A, and then D full on, and then D hammer again. So this whole little descending pattern is just a cool little riff anyways. 1, so that whole riff. Let's do it with the metronome. 2, 1 E and a 2 E and a. next phrase begins always on that low D string. Just think of it as hammer-on. So what I'll do now is I'm going to keep the tempo the same, and that's what I recommend doing, is just kind of starting off. I'm starting off with 60 beats per minute, and just work your way up to 70 beats per minute, 80 beats per minute, 90 beats per minute, until you can start to really get it up to speed. And you'll see after you work on it for a little while that every time you bump up the click a few more times, you're probably picking a little bit less and you're probably hammering a little bit more, but hopefully the phrasing of it really starts to come out from doing this kind of exercise. One begin to two begin All right, let's bump it up a little bit more. One again to two again. Keep on doing that. Bump it up. One again to two again. I gotta stop for a second. Need a little salve. I'm gonna take my own advice. Hopefully, maybe you're practicing along with me. You know, hopefully this is beneficial to you. This is how I like to break down things, try to think about the phrasing, try to think about what was in the player's head. I can't get it up to 120 BPM yet. I know that. I'm just not fluid enough at it, okay? But speed isn't something you should practice, okay? You should practice articulation, you should practice phrasing, and you should practice getting good at playing the notes efficiently and effectively. I'm still working my way through all that, of course, obviously. But speed is going to be a byproduct of all of that practice. If you can practice something slowly and cleanly and efficiently, consistently, eventually you'll be able to do it faster. So building these hammer-ons, especially hearing the altered crazy phrasing that starts to happen when you layer the threes over the fours like that, is really what it's all about, you know, and how to practice it is what I was hoping to pass on to you. Hopefully you have gotten a glimmer of hope that you can actually do this and eventually build it up to speed. First thing I'm going to do is put some of this on it. All right. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this. I hope that this was helpful if you're trying to learn the riff. I know it's a tough one, and I know there's a lot of people out there that can play it. I know there's a lot of people out there that are teaching it, and what I'm trying to do here is teach how to practice it. Okay, that's my goal with this lesson, and I appreciate you being here. If this was something that you got some benefit from, please hit that thumbs up button, give it a like, whatever you want to do. And if you really like this kind of stuff, consider giving me a subscribe down there on the little below thing where it says subscribe and the bell and all that kind of YouTuber wordage stuff. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate you being here. Take care.